Okay, great, thanks. We're going to talk about solving absolute value equations. We're almost done with this whole chapter of talking about solving equations, right? We've talked about everything, with the exception of this and percents, okay? So this week we'll be done with that, and then we'll be moving into graphing, which is awesome stuff. I love graphing, right? We could do, well, eventually we will. We could do a few if you wanted. But solving absolute value equations. How many people know what absolute value is? Raise your hand if you've heard of that term. Okay, so Sienna, can you give me an idea of what absolute value is?
It's a number's distance from zero.
Okay, absolute value. That's really good. Absolute value. Jan, would you do me a favor? On the heater, would you turn it to off?
No, I'm so.
Are you? But it's just noisy. I can't hear anything with this thing on.
It's so warm now.
All right, absolute value. It's basically a numbers distance from zero. Okay? So let's think about it. If I have a number line, and here's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's positive 5. How far away is 5 from 0? 5 units, right? What about this though? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 5. How far is negative 5 away from 0?
5.
5 units. 5 units. So one of the key words in this definition is this word right here. Can you have a negative distance?
No, that's not a distance.
Never. You can't. Think about it. If I were going to draw a rectangle, right, or whatever that is, okay? I can't have a length of a side that's below 0 because 0 is nothing, right? So below 0 for distance wouldn't exist. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you were like erasing with your finger.
Oh, work. Oh.
Victory!
Please work. Yes!
Yay!
Yes.
Thank God.
Everybody who's watching this video who's not part of our class is like, what?
Yeah, which is so good.
You. All right, that's good to know. So absolute, guys, absolute value has to be positive. It's a distance. It's always a positive number. So if I said something like this, the absolute value of 4, what would that be? 4. It would be 4. But what if I said the absolute value of negative 4?
It's 4.
That's also 4, because those two straight lines there represent the term absolute value. So absolute value of 4 is 4. Absolute value of negative 4 is 4. Okay? Logan, I need you to stop talking. Logan, I need you to turn around and face this way. And are you taking notes and stuff? Because we're quickly moving into stuff you haven't seen before. This you've seen, but you haven't seen the next stuff, right? Okay. So is everybody clear on that?
Yeah.
So whenever, now what if I did this though? If I said the absolute value of 4 minus 2. The question is, what do I do? Do I turn that negative sign into a positive?
Yes.
No.
No.
So an absolute value is sort of like a grouping sign. Okay? It's sort of like a grouping sign, like parentheses. You know how parentheses groups numbers? Well, absolute value does that too. And so the absolute value is the absolute value of the final sum or difference or whatever. So that would equal the absolute value of 4 minus 2 is 2, right? Absolute value of 2 is 2, right? Does it make sense? You see that? You don't change that sign to a positive. Does it make sense? That always stays that sign until you have done whatever you can do inside, right?
Gary,
okay? Yes.
It's a tiny bit confusing when you put lines. Can you put maybe like.
No, these lines mean absolute value.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what those lines mean.
Yeah, when you put those lines
Right.
around them, it is the absolute value.
Okay.
Yes.
As
So
long as they're.
we have to figure out a way.
Like
If-
maybe you could put tiny little indents in them. No, that would look like.
No, I can't.
parentheses.
You gotta get used to this, because that's what you're gonna see in
When you
math.
see it printed, it will be
Right.
very clear. Won't look at
But that is the way you delineate it in math. So whenever you see absolute value, you immediately know you're dealing with a positive number as the final answer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so now, what we're gonna do today, though, is we're actually gonna talk about solving absolute value equations. So if I gave you an equation like this, the absolute value, here's our number one problem. Absolute value of x is equal to 8.
Maybe
X equals 8.
X equals 8, right?
So what can x be?
See,
It
one.
could be 8 or negative 8. It could be 8 or negative 8.
Could be one.
Cannot be
All right,
1.
Jan.
It can be 8
Oh.
or negative 8.
Oh,
Yeah, it could be 8 or
So
negative 8.
is that true?
Oops.
Let's just think about this for a second. What is everything I could put inside there to get 8?
Eight.
I
Negative
could have an
Negative
8, or I could have a negative 8, and that would give me an 8. Everybody's in agreement with that, right?
Yeah.
So fist to 5, you totally get that, right?
This is.
So if I have, a way to solve for these things is to go like this. If the absolute value of x is equal to 8, then I write two equations. I know x could equal 8, or x could equal negative 8. Does that make sense? So now, let's take that concept and let's do another one. Let's say we have the absolute value of x plus 2 is equal to 10. All right? Now, what are all the possibilities that x plus 2 could equal?
It could be negative 12.
Oh, wait a minute. No, just what are the possibilities of x plus 2? What could that equal?
8 and negative 8?
Positive 10.
Oh, wait. There we
Well,
go.
yeah, you're trying to solve it. Don't solve it yet.
Ah.
I'm just saying, as here, x could be either 8 or negative 8. X plus 2 could be either 10 or negative 10. You with me? So this is what you do. You write two equations. You're always going to have two answers. So you're going to write the first equation is exactly like this without the absolute value signs. Because I know x plus 2 could equal 10. So you're going to write x plus 2 equals 10. Then you're going to write the word or. And then remember, x plus 2 could also equal negative 10 because the absolute value of negative 10 is also 10. So I'm going to say x plus 2 equals negative 10. Do you all understand how I got this?
Oh.
So the first equation is exactly what you see here without the absolute value signs.
Okay.
The second equation is just changing the sign of your last number. Does that make sense? You're not changing this sign ever. You're only changing the sign in front of this.
Oh, so that's pretty simple.
Right? It's really pretty simple. But there's more to it, right? So
I'm
yes,
so
Luke.
confused.
Wait, so you don't, you just like, do x plus 2 equals 10 or x plus 2 equals negative 2?
Yes.
That's it?
We're not done. We're not done. We're not done. Why is that true?
Yeah. I'm
Because,
so
okay,
slightly
so
confused.
think about it. What are all the possibilities that I could have in here to equal 10? I could have a 10,
You could have
Right?
or I could have a negative 10, right?
Yeah, okay.
So x plus 2 must either equal 10 or negative 10.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Do you see that?
All right.
Everybody get that? Make sense? Yeah.
Because James is right.
Yeah, okay, I get it now.
So, okay, so that's why it works. So now we got to finish. We got to finish and find our two answers. So we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. And that gives me x is equal to 8. Or subtract 2 from both sides. That gives me x is equal to negative 12. And then I put it in a circle or box or something, and I'm done.
Wait, can you believe that? I'm still a tiny bit slow. A little slow. Oh wait, so I was right, Gary, only I did it really fast.
Let's see here. Where does this board end? Okay. So
Because
number
I
3.
said 8, but that was up.
Number 3. Let's say I give you absolute value of x minus 7 is equal to, I don't know, 12. All right, we'll just try a couple just to make sure you're really comfortable with it. So I know that this x plus 7 could be
Give me x minus.
positive 12 or negative 12, because the absolute value of positive 12 is 12, the absolute value of negative 12 is 12. So x minus 7 could equal positive 12 or negative 12, right? So I'm going to write it as two equations. The first one is exactly like that. So x minus 7 is equal to 12, then the word or, and then x minus 7 is equal to negative 12. And then I add 7, I get x is equal to 19, and then add 7, x is equal to negative 5. Right? Okay? Everybody's clear on this, right?
Yes, okay, I get it.
Now, this only, notice how I broke it into two equations, right? Both of these, I broke them into two equations. This only works. Can break into two equations. Is this on here? Two equations. Hope it is. If absolute value is isolated. Isolated. So this is a really important concept. Absolute value. Is this absolute value sign and everything inside it isolated? In other words, on the left side of the equal sign is the only thing that you have, an absolute value sign with stuff inside it.
Yeah.
Then yes, that is isolated. Now, let's do a problem where it is not isolated. Okay? And we have to get it isolated, right? So if it's not isolated, we have to make it isolated before we can break it out into two equations. Question?
I just did something. There's two questions. I took the 12 and I subtracted it by 7, and then I took the 12 and I added it by 7, and those are the answers.
No, because then
What?
you get
Right?
positive 19 and it's not.
Unless you do it the wrong way.
Wait, what did you do?
No, you got, then you
No,
get
because,
positive 5.
yeah,
Wait,
you
what
would have
did you
gotten
do?
positive 5, not negative 5.
Well, then you can switch the problem.
Yeah, so get in the habit of doing the method I'm showing you because
I
it's
just,
going to be
I
confusing.
was just thinking.
Yeah, okay. 2, 3, 4. All right, so let's say I gave you something like this. As long as you understand this rule, you won't have trouble with the homework. If you do not understand this rule, I promise you, you will struggle with the homework. Now, I'm just going to tell you real quickly before I go in to do the next problem. Where people mess up is they'll go like this. They'll just write one equation. This is very typical. They'll write one equation and they'll get x equals 9 and they'll say the other one is x equals 19. The other one is x equals negative 19.
The other
That
one
is-
is negative.
That is almost never the answer. I mean, you're never going to have a almost maybe, I don't know if you will or not. But almost 99% of the time, they will not be the same numbers, opposite, you know? Okay, so number 4, let's try this. Let's say I had absolute value of 2x plus 4 minus 1 is equal to 15.
Oh, what?
You just get rid of
So,
That's all you have to do.
where is this is my absolute value term. Is this isolated?
No.
What is in the way?
The one.
The negative 1 is in the way. Do you see that?
Gosh.
You've got to have just the absolute value and everything inside it, followed by an equal sign. That minus 1 is in the way. So basically, what would you do?
You would add 1 to
Yes.
both sides, and then you would
That's
just
the
get 2
first
x
thing you
plus
have to do.
4 absolute value.
If you, I'm going to just show you. If you kept it the way it is, right? This is important to understand. If you kept it the way it is and you broke it out and said the absolute value of 2x plus 4 minus 1 is equal to positive 15, and the absolute value of 2x plus 4 minus 1 is equal to negative 15, the first one will be correct. The second one will always be wrong. Are you guys listening? I think you need to stop talking, okay? It's going to be wrong if you if you do that. You cannot change that to a negative 15 until this is isolated, right? So you gotta add this one, add 1. Okay, now I have absolute value of 2x plus 4 is equal to 16. Is this now isolated?
Yep.
Yes. So now I can break it out into 2 equations. Is that clear? Okay, only when it's isolated. 2x plus 4 is equal to 16, and what would I put for the other one?
Oh.
Or 2x plus 4 equals negative 16.
Yeah.
You got it,
Oh, got it.
right? You got it.
It's just
So now we're going to subtract 4, that gives me 2x is equal to 12, and then divide by 2, x is equal to 6, right? Or subtract 4, 2x is equal to negative 20, divide by 2, x is equal to negative 10.
I mean, negative 10, sorry.
Right,
'Cause
and
it's
so
negative.
there's my answer. Who's confused? Who said they're confused?
No, that's kind of like the stuff we're already learning. It's just with parentheses. It's still the same concept.
Say what?
I said I was confused, but now I get it.
You get it?
Gary.
There's no
The
scientific.
stuff I applied to the other one, how I said all that stuff, I don't think it would apply to this stuff. I can't see it doing that.
Right.
So that's why you're right.
Yeah. Okay, Rosemary.
Is 1 always going to be positive and 1 always going to be negative?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Once it's isolated, then you're going to break it out, and the right side will always, 1 will be positive, 1 will be negative, right?
What if you had an equation where, like, you have 2x plus 4 equals 15? What if you had, like, 2x plus, or 2x minus 17 equals 16?
2x minus 17 equals 16?
Would that make it positive? No. Then the other
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying when you break, oh, I see what you're saying. Will always one answer be negative? No, it won't. Oh,
What?
sometimes you could have, sometimes you, I'm pretty sure.
Will you multiply a negative times a negative?
But when you break it out, the key is that 1 will be negative, 1 will be positive. I don't know, actually, I'm not actually sure the answer. But I think they would not necessarily have to be both true. Negative, as an answer. All right, so now let's make it slightly harder.
No.
What if I did this?
It's not been hard so far.
All right, so I'm going to keep them simple.
It's
What if
not
I-
hard. Everyone says they get it.
Okay. All right, is the absolute value sign and everything inside it isolated?
No.
What's in the
No.
way?
The
4.
What is the 4 doing to this?
multiplying.
Oh, Gary,
So-
wait, can I?
So, yes, James, go ahead.
Would you do the thing where you put the 4 into the x and the 4 into the 2?
Distributive property?
Yeah.
So there are 2 ways.
Sorry.
There are 2 ways to solve this. In fact, I'm gonna show you both of them.
Okay, well, I'm gonna use distributive property.
Okay, so yes, absolute value it's a grouping type of a sign, like parentheses. Therefore, it's totally legal to use your distributive property, right? So that would give you the absolute value of 4x plus 8
Or you could just divide
is equal to 16, right? Yes, exactly. And so now, is this isolated?
Yeah.
So now I can do 4x plus 8 is equal to 16, or 4x plus 8 is equal to negative 16. Subtract 8, I have 4x equals 8. Divide by 4. You guys know how to do this part. That's why I'm kind of going too fast, right? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going too fast.
Yeah, you are.
All right. So I just solved that equation. Now I'm going to solve this one. I'm going to subtract 8. Subtract 8. That gives me 4x
negative 24.
is equal to negative 24. Divide by 4. X is equal to negative 6. Right? So there are my 2 answers. There are always 2 answers with absolute value equations. Yes. Gardner.
Couldn't you also just divide the 4 into itself?
So Gardner and Jan both mentioned that they saw the other trick. Which is, instead of multiplying it, using distributive property, okay guys?
Oh yeah, you would just divide by 4.
Okay, instead of that, you could, Logan, what would you do? What would you do? What else could you do? You've got this 4 being multiplied times this absolute value is equal to 16. What's the opposite of multiply? Divide. So you could divide the 4 out, and now suddenly you just have x plus 2, absolute value of x plus 2 is equal to 4. So guys, I'm just gonna have to fix that thing. They're supposed to be under the table and kind of quiet. So now now is this isolated? And this is a lot easier really than this one, right? Now, sometimes this number does not divide evenly into this, and then when that's the case, I would use this method. But if 4 goes into 16, I personally use this method most of the
Yeah,
time.
that'd be easier.
Because I think it's easier. Then suddenly I've got x plus 2 is equal to 4, or x plus 2 is equal to negative 4. Subtract 2, x is equal to 2, or subtract 2, x is equal to negative 6.
Oh yeah.
Right? And that gave us the same answer.
But it only works for like even numbers though. They go into each other.
Well, what I'm saying is this number, if it goes into this number evenly or as a whole number, then yeah, go ahead and do it this way. But if it doesn't, I would use this method.
That one's faster though. If
It's
it works.
faster.
So you can't do it if it doesn't
Yes.
work. Then
All right, so last one. Well, actually, no, two more.
What? It's
Two?
already
Can I erase?
10:21.
Can I erase?
Yes.
It's already nearly time for break.
What number am I on?
6.
6? Okay, 6. Guys, it's a little noisy for me. 6. If I said absolute, let's say 2 absolute value of x plus, I don't know, 5 minus 6 equals 10. Now,
oh, you just do
what
both.
is the problem? It's not isolated. Why?
Gary?
So, Rosemary.
Because of the 2 and the negative.
The 2 and the negative 6. Which would I do first?
Ooh, I know.
Rosemary.
You do the 2.
Yes.
Oh.
Well, no.
Yeah, I was right.
You could, but I would recommend you get rid of this first. Just like if I gave you this equation, 2x minus 6 equals 10, what would you do first? You would add the 6. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because then you get weird stuff.
Because, like, let's say that was a 5, Rosemary, just for a second. 2 doesn't go into 5. If I had divided this by 2, I'd have to divide that by 2, that by 2, and that by 2. And suddenly I'm in decimals or fractions, right? That's why you want to move that over first. You see what I mean? So let me get it back to where it was.
And then you just add the 5, and then it's 50.
So, well, I'm
No,
going to get back to
15.
6, because that's where everybody...
15.
All right, so I'm going to add 6 first. Add 6 first. And that gives me 2 absolute value of x plus 5 is equal to 16. Right? Now I can divide by 2, right? Because 2 goes into 16. So I'll divide by 2, divide by 2. And you realize why I don't have to divide this by 2, right?
Yeah.
I talked
Because
about
it's
this
by
last
itself.
week.
You're already
Because this is 2 times a blob. Right?
It's a blob.
And like if you had a fraction, 2 times 4 divided by, well, let's see. Well, let's do a different one. 6 times 4 divided by 2, right? I wouldn't divide the 6 by 2, and so, dude, you gotta stop talking. I need both of you looking here, because this is important stuff. When you have a quantity times a quantity divided by a number, you have to divide, you don't have to divide the 2 into the 6 and the 2 into the 4, right? Would that be right? So 6 divided by 2 is 3 times 2 divided by 2 is 2, is 24 divided by 2, 6? No. You basically, 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 6 3 times, it's 12. You with me? You only factored it out of one of the terms. Here is 2 terms, this term and this term. This is a block, right? So 2 goes out of that one, 2 goes out of this. That leaves me x plus 5 is equal to 8. Is it isolated?
Yes.
Can I break it into 2 equations now? X plus 5 is equal to 8, or x plus 5 is equal to negative 8. Subtract 5, subtract 5. X is equal to 3. Subtract 5, subtract 5. X is equal to negative 13, right? Right? There's my answer. Okay? Last one, number 7.
I thought we already know.
Fist of 5. You guys understanding this?
Yeah,
I'm like
it's
3 and a half. I'm like 18. I'm like 3 and a half.
All right.
I'm like 3 and a half.
Last one. Last one. Last one. It's going to take me 30 seconds if you guys pay attention.
alright, pay attention, guys.
Luke, stop. All right. Absolute value of x plus 4 is equal to negative 10.
Hold up.
How would I solve this?
You.
Oh,
Write the second
it just,
equation.
you just write,
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Oh, oh.
Absolute value can't
Wait.
be negative.
Ah.
Ah.
Wait a minute. Absolute value is always going to be a positive answer, right?
so,
Right?
Add it by 10.
You can't
No,
have,
let's see what-
because this is absolute value of x plus 4 is a distance. It has got to be equal to a positive number.
No
If it's equal to a negative number,
It's no
there is
solution.
nothing you can put in there for x for that to be true. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Impossible.
So is it like a
So
no
it-
solution?
Like during.
So no solution.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
no solution.
All right, fist of 5. You guys understand this
Yep.
lecture? Okay, awesome. All right, I'm gonna